Did you know that there are ways that you can ethically control the minds and actions of your audience members, whether they're in person or online, that'll result in higher conversions and more sales from every in-person presentation you do and from every webinar? Well, there are, and I'm going to tell you exactly how to do it today. Hi, it's Dave D from DaveD.com, where we help you get more customers, clients, or patients in less time and with less effort by mastering the art and science of one-to-many selling. Well, today's video is going to be a little bit controversial because we're going to be talking about mind control, or what I like to call ethical mind control. And this is the principle. If I can get my audience to do what I ask them to do, when I ask them to do it, throughout my presentation, at the end, when I ask them to buy, whether that means buying a product or service or scheduling a consultation with me, more of my audience will do it because of the principle of compliance. Small commitments lead to large commitments. So let's talk briefly about the ethical part of doing this. Yes, these strategies that I'm about to share with you are super powerful, and they can be used for good or evil. I'm assuming since you're watching this video, you've got a really good product or service that truly helps people get the result that they want. If that's the case, in the words of the great J. Abraham, you have a moral obligation to do everything you can to get that prospect, your audience member, to take action. So let's look at some of the techniques that you can use to get your audience to do what you want them to do and ultimately buy whatever it is you're selling. So again, compliance is getting the audience to do what you ask them to do when you ask them to do it, with the ultimate result being that we sell more of our products and services, we help more people, and we make more money. One of the keys to doing this is to keep your audience engaged throughout your entire presentation. The more engaged they are, the better your results are going to be. So let's go over some very practical compliance strategies that you can take and use immediately. The first compliance strategy happens at the beginning of a webinar. Now, by the way, I'm going to be giving you both strategies that you can use in webinars and in-person group presentations. Some of them you can use for both. The first one, though, is for a webinar. The first thing that you want to ask your audience is whether they can see and hear you. Now, there's a practical side to this, of course. We don't want to do a webinar where no one can see and hear us. But the real reason is that we want to get our audience engaged right from the very beginning. And so we say, hey, do me a favor. If you can see and hear me, type the letter Y, meaning yes, into the chat, or type the word yes into the chat. And what happens is right from the very beginning, before the audience even knows that you've started your presentation, you've already started the compliance principle. And then what you want to do is read the names of the people who answered yes. Now, if you're doing a huge webinar with a lot of registrants, you won't be able to read everybody's name. But this also shows folks that, hey, the webinar is live, that you're also engaged with the audience. The next thing to do is ask your webinar audience where they are from and have them type it into the chat. And then once again, read off the person's name and where they're from. So by the way, if somebody says that they're from Massachusetts originally, I'll say, hey, I'm originally from Massachusetts. Once again, the beauty of this is there's a practical side to this, and the practical side is, well, at the very beginning of your webinar, by asking these first two type of questions, you're giving time for people to show up. A lot of people are not going to show up exactly on time, and we want as many people before we start our presentation to actually be present with us on the webinar. Now, we don't want to overdo this. I typically only do it for about 1 or 2 minutes or even less, and then I start the presentation because I don't want people who showed up on time to wait for too long. But the second reason, again, is to get that participation, to get that engagement. You tell them, type in where you are from. Throughout your entire presentation, you want to constantly get them to type things into the chat. I typically will use the Y. So, hey, type the letter Y into the chat. You can say type yes into the chat. But you want to do it throughout your presentation, But very, very important that you do it at the very beginning of your presentation. So ask a lot of questions. And this is a principle that you can do in person, by the way. You're simply not going to ask them to type the letter Y. You're simply going to have them say yes. And you can also have them raise their hand. Now, this is kind of difficult to do if you're doing a traditional webinar, because someone who's going to be sitting at home probably is going to raise their hand if no one is seeing them. But this is a compliance and an engagement strategy that you want to use in an in-person presentation, and you want to use it a lot, especially at the beginning. But you want to carry it out throughout the entire presentation. So you ask them a question, and if they agree, you can have them raise their hand. Now, by the way, if you're doing a Zoom meeting, you can also have them raise their hand. And if you're doing a Zoom meeting where everyone can see everyone else, you can ask them to physically raise their hand, and they'll do it. Again, the practical side of this is that you're keeping the audience involved in the presentation, but more importantly, from a psychological level, every time they comply with you, every time they do what you ask them to do, when you ask them to do it, you are slowly taking control over their actions. Another strategy to use is the repeat after me strategy. Once again, this one works best when you are doing an in-person presentation, because you can have the audience repeat after you. Now, by the way, if you're doing a Zoom presentation where everyone can see everyone, this strategy applies as well. So have them repeat after you. The next thing is for both an in-person or a webinar, and that is to constantly tell people to write things down. Write this down. Make a note of this. Put a circle. Underline this. Man, this is one of the most powerful strategies that you can use. Number one, what it does is, of course, as I've been mentioning, it keeps the audience involved in the presentation. The more involved they are, the better your conversions are going to be at the end. However, the second thing that it does is that it emphasizes that what you are teaching them is of value, that it's important. By the way, one of the best ways to make the audience think that the content that you're delivering is absolutely stellar, well, of course, is to deliver stellar content, but even more importantly than that is to tell them that this is a golden piece of advice. Make sure that you write this down. Now, just as an aside, if you're doing an in-person presentation, one of the things that I always do is I look for someone that is not complying. Someone who, when I ask them to write down the note, isn't writing down the note. And what I'll do is I will stop, I will walk off the stage, and I will go right over to that person. I said, "You didn't write that down. This is one of the most important things. Pick up your pen and write it down." And they always do. By the way, the other thing that little trick does is, first of all, it makes the audience laugh. But more importantly, what happens is the rest of the audience, when you ask them to do something, they will do it because they don't want you to single them out. So write this down. Make a note of this. Put a circle around this. Put stars next to it. The next thing is the stand up. So you can have your audience stand up and participate in some type of exercise. Stand up, sit down, get them moving physically. Now you may think, well, this will only work if I do an in-person presentation, and that's not true. If there's a logical reason to have someone stand up and participate, then they will actually do it at home. Now, will everybody? No, everybody won't. You'll get more compliance in an in-person presentation because of the social pressure factor, right? You don't want to be the only person that's sitting down, but you can use this strategy on a webinar. And I often do. So there's something that I teach, which is my pre-show ritual, which involves me setting an anchor. And we'll do another training on that at a later point, but where I rub my hands together and I clap, and I'm teaching my audience to do that. So I get them, even a webinar audience, to stand up and participate with me. It's one of the most powerful strategies that you can implement. Now, by the way, you don't need to use all of these. Pick and choose the ones that you want to use that make sense and don't seem forced in your presentation. One of the other things you've got to realize here, though, is that you need to do this throughout the presentation, not just at the beginning. And once again, remember, if I can get my audience to do what I ask them to do every time I asked them to do it, when I asked them to stand up, go to the back of the room with their credit card to fill out an order form, they will. If I ask them to click on a link on the screen that they see to schedule an appointment with me, that's what they do. Now, I'm going to give you one more strategy, which is just so powerful and that you should use it in every single webinar that you do. And I'm going to give you a little twist on the strategy. So here it is, the participation bonus gift that you give to someone just for attending and staying on your webinar. So at the very beginning of your webinar, after you've made your big promise, you tell the audience that, hey, I've got a special gift for everyone. It's absolutely free. And all you need to do is stay on the webinar, stay present on the webinar, and then at the end, I will give you this bonus. Now, typically, this bonus is something that the person can download, a PDF, an article, a video, whatever it is for you. It doesn't have to be a spectacular gift, but it does need to have some value to your audience. Now, the little twist on this is powerful. So listen to me very carefully because very few people are using this strategy. At the very end of your presentation, you're going to do one of two things. If you are selling a product and you're driving people to an order form, what you're going to do, and by the way, this is not a strategy that I created. I actually learned it by watching this video. The strategy is to put the link to the bonus gift, the free bonus gift, at the bottom of the order form. So you tell your audience to go to the order form and scroll down to the bottom, and that's where they can get the link for the gift. It's a really, really powerful strategy that I learned from watching a webinar by a guy by the name of Rob Goyette. So again, you're telling people, hey, to go get the bonus, click on the enroll link that you see, scroll down to the bottom, and that's where the bonus is. Now, the beautiful thing about that strategy is it makes everybody who's still on the webinar go to your order form. And if your order form is set up correctly, then what you can do is it resells them on it, and it gives the opportunity for them to buy. So someone who's on the fence who may not have ordered will order. By the way, a little distinction about that strategy is you also want to tell people, by the way, if you order, don't worry because the free bonus will be in the members only area, so you don't need to download it. Okay, so that's the first strategy if you're selling an actual product. Now, let's say you're not selling an actual product, but you're using a webinar to book appointments, to schedule consultations with people. Then what you do is at the end, you tell them that the way to get the bonus gift is to simply send you an email with their thoughts about the actual webinar that you just did so that you can share with other people that it was truly valuable for them. And so what happens then is you are going to get emails from folks that are going to end up being testimonials. Now, all of them aren't going to be good, but if you frame it the way that I just frame it, that I want to get your feedback on this webinar so I can share that it was valuable and let other people know that it was valuable, the webinar, I would really appreciate that. So you're asking for a testimony without asking for a testimonial. Now, why is that so powerful? That's so powerful because now you have testimonials about the free webinar that you do. You see, a big mistake that people make on their webinar landing pages is to put testimonials that they've gotten from clients about results that they got once the person became a client. That's actually a negative because the person, the prospect, isn't there yet. They're not ready to become your client. They haven't even seen your webinar. But if you have testimonials about the actual webinar, and that's how you get them, as the way I just shared it, now you can put those on your landing page. You could put those in your invitation email sequence, which sells people on signing up and showing up for the webinar. So again, this strategy is to, at the end, tell anyone who wants to get a free copy of whatever this bonus is to send you an email with their thoughts about the webinar so that you can share their thoughts with other people so people will know that it is an extremely valuable webinar. So those are some different compliance strategies that you can use. Take them, use them. You will get better results, meaning more sales, more appointments. You'll be helping more people, and you'll be making more money. Hey, if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, what the heck are you waiting for? Subscribe to the channel and make sure you turn on the notifications so you don't miss any of the videos I create for you. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please give it the thumbs up and comment below. Well, thanks so much for watching, and as always, kick butt and make mucho dinero. Talk to you next time.